think on the beach, if I'm not mistaken. Can you show that? I really apologize. I don't want to put you in discomfort, but this is an investigation where a lot of our people are involved. A lot of people are hungry. A lot of people have been deprived of their ayuda or help.
Here it is. Like,
Can you make it a little bigger, please?
他说这个照片他们会播放大一点。
There you go. That is Mr. Alan Lin or
他说那个是
your
Alan
friend
Lim
again, and Michael Yang are the two men at the extreme left.
和你在左边。
你刚说我认识是林伟雄，我不认识的是阿兰念是谁？
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Yang said that he only knows Lin Wei Xiong and he doesn't know any person by the name of Alan Lim.
Well, that's the same person that I showed you. All right.
他说那是同样的人。
你这同样的人是你说的，我知道啊。不能问我。
That is based on your statements, Mr. Chairman, but he cannot confirm that. Yeah, he only says that he only knows Lin Wei Xiong.
I'm just asking you. I've not made any conclusion. I'm just asking you. These are one and the same person.
你刚说我就是给你答了，我认识林伟雄啊。
I already replied that I only know Lin Wei Xiong.
All right. Okay. You are also in a corporation that involves a certain lady by the name of Rose Nono Lin. Familiar with her?
有一个叫做 Rose Nono Lin， 你认识她吗？
Yes,
yes, Mr. Chairman.
In fact, she is the president of a corporate secretary, if I'm not mistaken, Jason Uson in Piley Holdings, Rose Nono Lin, corporate secretary, Yan Hong Min. And then again, you see Lin Wei Xiong, aka Alan Lim, vice chairman.
Vice chairman.
是啊，这是我们的股东。
Yes, Mr. Lin Wei Xiong is one of our stakeholders, and Rose Nono Lin as well.
And is he married to Rose Lim?
Come again, Mr. Chairman, sorry.
Is he the Eco Tai Tai of, is Rose Lim Eco Tai Tai of Lin Wei Xiong, your good friend?
他在问Rose Nono Lin 是不是
siguro kung ano ibig sabihin ng asawa.
是不是林伟
Or a
雄的
girlfriend.
我知道是，我说我看到林伟雄是他罗斯林是他夫人，对。
Yes, Lin Wei Xiong is the husband of Rose Nono Lin.
Thank you. And then Piley Estate Group.
然后百利地
You're
产
there again. Yang Hong
他们
Jan.
也在里头。
I'm sorry, that's your brother, right? Hong Jan Yang.
洪阳将是你的
Your brother?
哥哥吗？
是我的哥哥啊。
Yes, it's his brother, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. So again, by affinity, Alan Lim's in this corporation, the wife of Alan Lim, Rose Nono Lin, is also in this corporation, Piley Estate Group. And then the name of Power Megamix, shown here, Rose Nono Lim, again, president. She is, as you say, the wife. And also informally, biological, Wang Suyan appears again, our president who is here, Rose Nono Lin, treasurer, and there you go. Again, Rose Nono Lin, the wife of Mr. Lin Wei Xiong, right? And then as I go to the left, in Sean Wei, that is a Pogo Corporation. Are you familiar with that?
你认识雄伟吗？
雄伟是我认识，可是这个雄伟是他们的，我不知道，我认识。
He knows the company, but he only knows them. He knows the company, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, I'm not accused you of anything. I'm just saying these are the things that we find out. And now Mr. Lincoln Ong, who said that he gets guidance from you to make sure that you can guarantee, and the president himself says you are the pagador, which means that you really have connections with Parmalee, because Lincoln Ong is able to transact business without any documentation as to where the money came from. Go ahead, I'll allow you to translate.
你跟他说，我当时就是叫中国的人相信他，我没有给他签担保，我只有用叫中国人，我们中国的方式就是以我介绍，我叫他相信他。
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang basically did was to introduce Mr. Lincoln to his friends in China for potential being a supplier, and then he also mentioned that these people that they can trust on Lincoln to be able to
So in
to
fact,
trust on Lincoln.
it is not accurate for you to
So-
say, and listen to my question, because you said first time you saw them and the last time you saw them was when you saw the president in March 2017. And then all of a sudden
Actually,
your name comes out and now you're saying you introduced Mr. Lincoln Ong, and that his credit is good because you are practically, as Mr. Lincoln Ong says, practically a guarantor. Is that correct?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may shed some light on
Okay.
that as well.
No. I'm asking the question here right now for the moment. I'll get to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So Mr. Lincoln Ong is being guaranteed by you, and Mr. Lincoln Ong cannot show any paper trail that you got some money and that he is able to transact all these orders in China without any paper trail. And Mr. Wang says they have a bank which transacted where they transacted a letter of credit. When I asked him, how did you manage to do that? You have a letter of credit? And I said, yes, very readily. And he said, which bank? He said, Union Bank. Very good bank. And yet, the transaction happened in November. For 7 months, 7 buwan, una kayo mag-transact noong April. So in between April and is it November? Where was the money coming from? And Lincoln said, "Oh, I was getting, aid from everybody. Ganyan ang Chinese way. We're not gonna accept that. You know that."
Um,
Di ba, Lincoln? Pwede ba yun? Nasasabihin mo na lang sa amin and you expect us to believe?
Mr.
These
Chairman,
millions of pesos of the people's money that are being spent to an unknown corporation, what we call prima para, a first-time corporation with only 625,000 pesos ang capital. Tapos you're saying, oh, marami kaming inutangan, nagagaransyan ni Mr. Michael Yang na sinasabi nung una, wala siyang pakialam sa Far Valley. And then all of a sudden, nakita natin ang mga connectivities, pumasok na si Alan Lim, pumasok na yung asawa ni Alan Lim, magkakasama sila. In other words, talagang paikot-ikot lang kayo dyan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I'll get to you. Lincoln, tama? Okay. I know that you're chomping on your bit, Mr. Wang.
Mr. Chairman.
Before we leave Mr. Yang, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just another question to Mr. Yang. Tanong po kay Mr. Yang tungkol dun sa video na pinakita ng chairman. Sabi po ni
Hindi
Mr.
akin yun, hindi akin yun. Pinakita ng RITM yun.
Right, that's right, Mr.
RITM,
Chairman.
ah,
It's
sorry.
easily available on
RTVN,
YouTube.
RTVN, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Opo. So, sabi po ninyo, Mr. Yang, nakilala nyo si Mr. Zheng Bingchang sa video na iyon. In-identify nyo po siya. Bilang kayo yung dating presidential economic advisor kay Presidente, hindi nyo ba siya pinayuhan, hindi nyo ba siya binigyan ng advice na yung mga tao na connected sa Pharmaly International ay fugitive na, pugante sa batas sa Taiwan kasi meron silang warrants of arrest, yung mag-amang Huang at pati si Mr. Zheng na nakilala nyo sa video.
那个时候我当时17年他们公司是好好，我怎么知道他们现在通缉啊？我又不是行商，我哪能算得到啊？
Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang said at that time,
17年他们是上市公司。
yeah, the company is in good standing and there were no records or anything.
Pero siguro naman, Mr. Yang, dahil close nga kayo ni Presidente,
So,
matagal na,
他说你
concerned pa rin kayo sa kanya. So siguro
Ni Ken
nung
Zongtong,
nabalitaan nyo na kahit sa
Zongtong.
dyaryo lang itong mga naging problema ng Pharmaly, hindi ba kayo na-concern na sabihan siya na Mr. President, ito palang kumpanya ang mga tao nito ay wanted for financial crimes, may standing warrant pa nga sa Taiwan. Hindi nyo ba siya in-inform?
他说呢，最近不是新闻有出来说这些人嘛， 是在台湾有犯了一些法事通缉犯嘛？
嗯
你没有因为你是之前的总统的经济顾问，你没有对总统有关心跟通知他说这些人是有放过这些东西。
你不要说我17年介绍他们来投机，他们考察不行回去，我就没有再观察他们了，也没有再联系了，我没有去，也没有去观察这些，已经没有做生意，哪有什么也没有来做生意。
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang said that, during the 2017, he introduced, then things didn't transpire for potential business opportunity. Then after that, they have no more communication.
Oh, well, alam po natin, Mr. Chairman, na sinamahan ni Mr. Yang si Presidente sa opisina
sure.
ng
Mm.
Fullwin International sa Xiamen
没有
noong
带总统
2015.
去
So okay, at least sinabi ni Mr. Yang na nagkita pa sila noong 2017. Pero I really find it hard to believe po na at this point in time, hindi naisip ni Mr. Yang na importanteng i-inform at i-advise si Presidente na fugitives na at ma-apprise si Presidente na yung mga tao, yung mga kumpanya na engaged yung gobyerno niya ngayong panahon ng pandemya ay wanted for criminal activities. Medyo mahirap po paniwalaan, Mr. Chairman. I'll leave it at that for now po. Salamat, Mr. Chairman.
你不要
Mr.
说
Wang,
Mr.
你不要说我17年介绍完我没有啊，他们又没有来再做生意，我要通知干嘛？我们没系总统也没有空天天听我，也没有来跟总统有联系，要只有通知干嘛？这是人家生意的事情。
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang said that after the 2017, there has been no more communication after. There's no more business, so and then he doesn't always have an open. 你就是没有跟总统直接正常的那个沟通的嘛，对吧？
什么正常？你是
不是
跟他说，
，sorry, let me just
你
clarify.
跟他说我们17年来，他来
So 2017,
来这边考察完就没有来做生意，
after
我们没有联系。
they
他也
made
没有
their
再
feasibility study,
打电话来去
yeah, after they made their feasibility study, then okay, then so after 2017, when they made their feasibility study, there's no business that progress. And then after that, there's nothing more to report to the president because there's no more any progress or anything about the situation.
na pinasinungalingan naman ni Lincoln. Sabi ni Lincoln, pagka sinusiguro niya yung mga supplier na backup siya ni Michael Yang.
I'm sorry, come again, Mr. Chairman. Pinasinungalingan po ni Lincoln.
That when he negotiated by telephone, which is really weird, they took their word for it because sinasabi niya si Michael Yang ang guarantor.
他说呢，林立说嘛，你有帮他介绍嘛，他们只是在电话上面沟通嘛，然后呢，就说呢，你就是跟他们讲说，他们可以这个林肯。
是啊，要说林坤中国也有人，他中国也有可能派人去谈，跟他谈嘛。
Mr. Chairman, yes, Lincoln may also have his people in China who could also probably discuss and negotiate it with these suppliers.
Question is, sabi ni Lincoln, pagkausap niya yung mga tao sa China, sinasabi niya, ang backup niya rito, or words to that effect, ay si Michael Yang. And that was okay.
他背后的支持人是杨总 ，backup 杨总。
你跟他说我没有
Mr. Chairman,
这个
Mr.
他要
Chairman,
说我没
may
办
I
法。
interject on this part?
Just a moment, please. I'm asking somebody a question.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
你跟他说我没有，他是说我是我跟他说这个我没有，
你只是介绍。
对，我是介绍。
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Yang said that he just simply introduced them.
All right, so you want to limit it that, but Lincoln Ong denies it. So now we're saying Lincoln Ong is lying and that he is showing that he is misrepresenting your name. Is that correct?
Very quickly, Mr. Chair, just very quickly, on that point that you raised, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Pangilinan.
Yes, thank you. Tanong kay Mr. Lincoln Ong, pag sinabing nag-guarantee siya, si Mr. Yang, i-guarantee niya na mababayaran yung supplier ng gobyerno. Tama yun, ano? Kayo, kasi babayaran kayo ng gobyerno. Tama?
Tama.
Tama?
Yes po, Mr. Chairman. Yes
In
po.
other words, siguro ang naisip nyo, ang lakas ni Mr. Yang sa gobyerno, kaya niyang ma-ensure na yung bilyong-bilyong halaga ay mababayaran ng gobyerno. Tama ba 'yon? Yun ang guarantee na binibigay ni Mr. Yang na lalabas yung pondo ng gobyerno. At
Already answered. He said yes already.
mababayaran kayo at babayaran ninyo yung supplier. Tama ba 'yon? That's correct. Anyway, you already answered it. You already answered yes to my question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Thank you, Mr.
for the
Chairman.
record lang about the answers of Mr. Yang earlier.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mahirap lang talaga maniwala na since 2017, wala nang komunikasyon sina Mr. Yang at si Presidente because just very recently, the past days, dinipensahan very emotionally ni Presidente si Mr. Yang. At yung alam nating lahat, yung ganyang mga matagal na at close na mga relationship, reciprocal yon. So kung may care at concern si Presidente kay Mr. Yang, naniniwala ako na ganun din ang pakiramdam ni Mr. Yang kay Presidente. So, mahirap talagang paniwalaan na wala ng communication. Just for the record, Mr. Chairman. Salamat.
Your statements are noted. I just want to say that he was referring to the fact that he never saw Farmali after that meeting, which is belied by Lincoln Ong. He didn't talk about the president. He was, because in fact he was, as you say, defended by the president all the time.
Mr. Chairman,
And,
I was actually asking about the President. and
right.
if I can say
Mr.
some
Wang,
words on this.
please, Mr. Wang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, to put light to the whole history of what happened, it's after the meeting with the president in March 2017, the Taiwan family instructed me to pursue the expansion into the Philippine market. But as we reached the end of 2018, they started to show no interest to further development of this in the Philippine market.
So did you show no interest?
My previous company, the Taiwan family, showed no more interest in
No
continuing
interest in what?
to build. The plan was to build a manufacturing plant in the Philippines.
So you're
But-
saying you have no more interest in putting up a plant?
The Taiwan family.
Well,
So-
how can you have a Taiwan family investor when you have already destroyed your name in Taiwan?
I'm talking in 2018, at the end of 2018, Mr.
You had no
Chairman.
more interest in investing in the Philippines. Why
Not
did you
me.
ever have that?
Not
Is that what
me.
you told the president? You were going to invest in the Philippines?
Yes, we told the president. The meeting in 2017 March was that
Yes.
the Taiwan family, the listed company, was to build a manufacturing plant in the Philippines.
Where in the Philippines, if I may ask?
They didn't decide on it because they
So
didn't
it
push
was
through.
all in Kuwait, in expectancy. You don't know where you're going to invest. You just say, I want to meet the president because I might invest. Is that correct?
There was intent to invest.
That's how I take it.
We did look at a few locations, but none was concluded. But I just want to share.
What was concluded? You cannot conclude on the basis of a desire to invest in something that you have not said so, and you don't even know where to invest it.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot represent the entire board of that Taiwan
Yes, you
family.
can. Yes, you can.
I cannot. I'm only.
Anyway, I'm not going to argue with you. That's
No,
your
no,
thing.
sorry, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say,
Obviously, you cannot represent anymore because the board's the reputation of Taiwan Farmali has been singed or terribly destroyed in Taiwan. Is that correct?
you only made known of this in August 2021.
Even if you knew it in 2018 or 2020 or in 2094, it is already destroyed because that was a very big scam that was pulled. $50 million was lost, correct?
Mr. Chairman,
Correct.
I just would like to answer on why did Mr.
No,
Michael Yang.
You're saying that you no longer, as if the Philippines is going to jump at your investment. I got a lot of investments for Taiwan in the Philippines. And they put in their money. They borrowed money. It was all on the up and up, in the open.
Yes.
And
And
when they
that's why
said they
I
were going to
left.
come over, Lee
That's why I
Teng-hui said
left.
they were going to go south. You're not even Taiwanese, you're Singaporean.
That's precisely why I left the company. in 2019 because I felt embarrassed that a company will make its commitment to a country to do something and not pull through.
You know, we're poor. We're a
no,
poor country. And
I
when you
felt very
say
embarrassed
we'll make a
by
commitment and now you're going not to invest, is that what you're trying to say?
I felt embarrassed by my
Take your
previous
investment elsewhere. We
I
don't
felt
want to do business with people who trick the stock market, where public people or people buy their stocks out of trust for the company. Is that what you're trying to say? We'll answer you right now. I certainly wouldn't want to do business with you. Okay, you don't even know where your father is, right?
I don't
Where
know
do you
where
think
he
your
is.
father is right now?
I don't know, probably.
And I
really don't.
sympathize with you. Because I lost my father many years ago and I still pine for him. Okay?
It's-
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just would
No,
like
I
to.
just
I mean, I'm not trying to argue. I just want to tell
who's
you.
arguing? I'm not arguing with you.
I may have been portrayed as I'm arguing with you. I
You said that.
apologize
I
for
didn't
that.
say that.
I'm sorry. I just want to say why Mr. Michael Young said he didn't know about Harmony Pharmaceutical Corporation, because after in 2019, when I quit the previous Taiwan company, I was very embarrassed. I was embarrassed to everyone. I don't
I'm
know
sure
what
you
to
were.
say.
Yes.
I was, and so I did not inform Mr. Michael Young when I set up my own company,
Well, nobody said that. All right.
and I intentionally asked.
Nobody said that, but it cannot be denied that Mr. Farmerly came in with Mr. Young directing traffic when you went to see the president. I didn't see you engaging in a very lively talk with the president, and you can speak English. I didn't see your father in a lively conversation with the president, and I'm sure he speaks English very well because he's from Singapore. But Mr. Michael Young was very, very ebullient. He was the master of ceremonies.
I'm not here to defend Mr. Michael Young. I'm here to defend.
That's what I thought you were doing.
No, definitely not. I'm here to
Okay, I
defend.
take your word for it then.
Yeah, I just want to say on record that even though he didn't know about this Harmony Pharmaceutical Corporation, when we received the bid for the PPEs and the BGIs, the quantum was so large, we seek all the resources we could find. And I asked Lincoln to approach Michael Young to help with the supplies and
So you
perhaps
ask him
Yeah.
to get help in the supply
and the funding.
and the funding.
Yes,
Why is he a man of great means? He owns a building, I think, in Davao. He started selling telephones,
because
cell phones.
because I think he is a successful businessman, a Chinese businessman with a lot of connections in China with all these supplies. And so
He's very well connected. Okay, we're willing to accept that because I can see that he was even invited to go to China, and he gets a lot of strength from his friendship with our president. So I will leave it at that.
but I
Even
want to
suggesting anything, but you're the one suggesting that he's very. But we're just reacting to what Mr. Michael Young said, that after that meeting, you never talked with him. Now you're saying that you wanted Mr. Young to help you in China because he's very well connected, correct?
yes, and he didn't know it was me.
Answer the question, yes or no?
I asked Lincoln if he could talk to Mr. Michael Young to help PPC, Family Pharmaceutical Corporation, which he did not know it was owned by me. Well, I have a share in that company.
Yeah, but you were with him, and earlier on, you said you asked yourself so that because he was such a big man in China, and therefore you needed his help. Am I wrong?
I do not
Did I
say.
hear you wrong?
I said, Mr. Chairman, what I said is I asked Lincoln to approach Mr. Michael Young.
Don't mumble. Just say it.
Mr. Chairman, what I said was I asked Mr. Lincoln On to approach Mr. Michael Young, and omitting the details that I was actually a shareholder of Family Pharmaceutical Corporation.
There you go. So you asked Mr. Lincoln Ong because you needed Michael Young support to get clout in China.
Yes,
Did I
that's
understand you
correct.
correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now I will ask you another question, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
How old are you?
I'm 31 years old, Mr. Chairman.
Very young. Very young. And, you know, when you first met the president, that was about what? 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
In 2017, yes.
About 27, 26, would you say?
Yes, that's correct.
And you're a very strong entrepreneur because you're bidding for billions of pesos worth of medical products such as, masks and PPEs, right? And you got them, right?
Yes, we were awarded the
Somebody
bids.
got them, right?
Yes, the company was awarded.
Who was it who told you, who encouraged you to go to PSDBM? Because you're new here.
I think based on my recollection, there was already procurement by PSDPN from the Chinese circle. I think it was maybe referring to that military plane and military vessel where they went to deliver the goods. So we felt that if they are procuring in that manner, we should try to put ourselves out there because Mr.
You
Lincoln,
got, you got to use the plane, right? Right?
we did not
You
use
got
the
to-
plane. We heard
Who
about
did you
someone
refer
using
to
the
it
plane.
then? What has that got to do with my question? My question is, how did you get to know that there were big deals to be made in PSDBM? Who told you that?
There was talk in the Chinese communities that there is perhaps a procurement by the
And of course, you're
PSDBM.
so lucky. Like Mr. Lau is so lucky. You got 8.7, 8.9 billion, right? 8.8 billion, right?
Miss,
Yes.
I
Yes.
I don't understand the question, Mr. Chairman.
It's very clear. You're so lucky you got 8.8 billion contracts, not including 2021.
I would say, Mr. Chairman, that we were lucky to be awarded, but we worked hard to get it delivered.
Oh, yes, of course you work hard. You got it with the 650,000 capital, 625,000 peso capital. I don't think you can get to first base in China with that kind of capital. Or in America or in Taiwan with 625,000, you can get 58 million pesos. Let's start with that. $1 million contract. And then later on, it went up to as high as 3.8 billion. All right?
Mr.
Right.
Chair, just very quickly, one quick question. Was he aware, with your permission, that the FDA did not have a license to operate from the FDA to import these products that they brought in, that they only got it in January of 2021 after bringing in billions already? Was he aware of that? He is saying they were working hard. You know, you were able to get it by cutting so many corners.
We have FDA LTOs since March 2020. I don't understand the Honorable Senator's
right?
question.
Charade Puno was there in your meeting with the president. So they are on notice that they were brought to Mindanao to meet with you, correct? You had to work hard to get Charade Puno to be there. She's the FDA Director General at the time.
I believe ex-Director General Puno was no longer FDA director since I can't remember when.
Senator Delon, did you have a question?
No, I yield to Senator Lacson.
Yes,
Oh, yes,
Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Lacson.
just a couple of quick questions. When you submitted your letter of intent to PSDBM, I will address this to Mr. Lincoln Yang or Mr. Wang Chuyan. What documents did you attach to your letter of intent?
Mr. Chairman, during that time, letter of intent plus sample only.
No. What did you attach? Ano mga dokumentong in-attach ninyo sa letter of intent?
Yung Mr. Chairman, ng first letter of intent namin, it's only the letter of intent plus the sample only. Wala naman pong mga attachment nung time na yan.
But eventually, you submitted documents, di ba? Pertinent documents like the GIS or articles of incorporation. Hindi kayo na-require ng PSDBM?
That's for the PhilJeps po, Mr. Chairman. Pero after nung namin submit po ng LOI, magsisend mo naman po sila ng RFQ sa amin. And then we just have to comply yung mga requirements po sa
Yes. Ano
RFQ.
yung mga requirements that you submitted?
Sandali na po.
GIS.
Yung text give me a few seconds po.
Well, general information sheet, di ba? Paano kayo ma-identify kung wala kayong attachment? Paano ma-identify yung corporation? Just a mere letter of intent with nothing attached to your letter of intent, and there you go. You were awarded.
Sandali lang po, Mr. Chairman.
Sige.
Medyo natataranta po, pero allow me
Yeah, relax
to
lang.
pull out the Mr. Chairman, dito ang requirement po nung sa RFQ is mayor's permit for year 2020, income tax return, net financial contracting capacity, and PhilJeps registration number upon receipt of notice of award. Yun po yung para sa MAS po.
Okay. So, doon sa GIS, di ba naka-indicate siyempre yung pangalan ng mga incorporators? Lahat. Personal circumstances, no? Pati address, kung Filipino, lahat, di ba?
Yes po.
Okay. So, I have here your articles of incorporation, yung Parmalee Pharmaceutical Corporation. I notice here, si Mohit Dorgani, Justin Garado, and si Wang Chuyen, iisa yung address, 14A, McKinley Place Condominium. Did they share the same residence, the same address?
I can confirm that, yeah. During that time po,
Yeah,
yes
okay. So, ang tanong ko ngayon kay Attorney Lau, di ba sa Bayanihan 2, I know this because I was the one who proposed the amendment to this, Section 4U ng 11469. 11494. Okay. Ang sinasabi rito, okay, tama lang yun, expeditious. Procurement of the following as the need arises. In the most judicious, economical, and expeditious manner. Pag sinabi mo judicious, di ba dito papasok yung due diligence? Yung economical, dito papasok yung mas mababa. Attorney Lau?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hindi mo napansin sa dokumento sa articles na iisa yung address ng tatlong incorporators?
That was not required, Mr. Chairman. What is required is that we procure it in the most expeditious manner, and we made sure, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
expeditious is under Bayanihan 1.
Yes, we do
Under
not
Bayanihan
pay.
2,
Yes, we do not pay unless they deliver. That is the most crucial part of it all. Kasi kung ang concern po natin, paano kung nag-release tayo ng bayad tapos hindi sila nag-deliver? Yun po ang sagot nun, how basic it is. We don't release money unless they deliver. Kung pupunta tayo sa ibang agencies, kahit lahat ng agencies sa buong Pilipinas, they bid. They have all the documents. On its face, pwede yan i-comply. Pagkatapos nagbigay ng 15%, what happens? They don't show up. Nawawala ang 15% ng government, the down payment. But in this instance, the primary question is this. Kasi ang layo-layo na ng discussion natin. The basic question should be this. Did the government, in this instance, release money before having the items delivered? Did the government release money na tinakbo ng supplier? Never once in the instance of PSDBM that happened to Parmalee. They delivered before we paid, after inspection.
Yes, we are being lectured by this Attorney Lau. Can you yield the floor to me for 1 second?
yes.
Mr. Lau.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lau, you are aware of the requirement of that the contracting party, that the supplier must comply. That they must show a net financial contracting capacity as required by Republic Act 9184. You're aware of that?
Yes, that is for infrastructure contracts, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, that's the answer. Now,
Or
is
it
there anything? Yeah,
is
wasn't it mentioned earlier by one of you that they look for net financial capacity? Okay, so how do you determine the financial contracting capacity of a supplier?
that is not one of the requirements in a common supply
Mr.
chain.
Lau, you're saying it is not part of the requirement.
It is part of the requirement in a infrastructure contract. This
In
is
a supply agreement, you're saying it is not required.
yes during Bayanihan 1, Mr. Chairman.
It is not required. Doesn't ordinary common sense and prudence dictate that you should not award 54 million pesos worth of a contract for a company with 625,000 capitalization? You keep on being technical and say that is not required. But wouldn't prudence, I'm still asking you the question, wouldn't prudence require you to at least raise a red flag when you award 54 million pesos worth of supply to a company with 625,000?
Two things to answer that. First point, the 54 million was not awarded one time. Second, 3 points.
Okay.
Second point, the award was built, was established time and again, point by point, transaction per transaction. If you fulfill one transaction,
Okay.
it says your credentials, but the next transactions it build up your second credential. Third point, Mr. Chairman, common sense dictates that we preserve the money of the government. And how did we preserve the money of the government? We did not pay a single centavo to the supplier until they delivered. That is the highest safeguard that we can do for the country. They delivered.
Jesus Christ. Will you please stop lecturing,
was-
Mr. Lau? Stop
I'm
lecturing on
Chairman, I'm answering.
okay. Okay, we have heard you, okay? We have
Thank
heard
you.
you. The point remains, okay, how much was the first contract given to Farmally?
I think the best person to answer that is the PSDBM staff. I don't have
All right.
records with me, Mr. Chairman.
No, because you said there were three. This is 24 million. It's not just one transaction, but several. Question, what was the first contract?
Surgical mask, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Surgical mask.
The ITR for 2019, was it submitted?
Yes,
For
I think
Farmally?
requirements, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, anyway. Now, let me shift to Mr. I'll go back to you later, Mr. Lau.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Young, are you a
你是
licensee of any POGO license personally?
说什么？
Were you
你
granted a POGO license?
你是不是有这个博彩的这个牌照吗？
没有，我没有。
No, Mr. Chairman.
Are you connected with any company which was granted a POGO license?
你是不是有跟一些
Remember, you're under oath.
公司有这些博彩的牌照有关系吗？
他说我没有，他说
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Do you have any relative who was granted a POGO license?
你有没有亲戚有这个博彩的执照吗？
这个他们有跟我没关系。
If his relative ever has, it has nothing to do with him.
I am not saying that it has something to do with you. Just answer me as a fact. Do you have any relative granted
你有
a POGO license?
亲戚有没有这个？
给他说我不知道，我
He is not aware, Mr. Chairman.
我没有参与，
You are not aware.
不要知道
Earlier your statement was you did not exert any influence on the grant of any license. Are you changing that now?
他说刚才他们有问你没有，他说刚才他问的你是没有就是用你的身份来影响拿到这些执照。 Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to clarify the question again. You asked if he did not use any influence.
No, he was the one who stated that, not me. He was the one who stated that. My question is very simple. Do you have any relative who is a Pogo licensee?
他在问你有没有任何亲戚是有得到那个博彩的牌照。
跟他说我不知道，他们有拿我不知道。
He doesn't know, Mr. Chairman.
他说我不
You
知
do
道，
not know.
我没有参与。跟他说我没有参与，我不知道。
He doesn't know, Mr. Chairman. He's not involved.
Nobody said he is involved. But now, do you have any relative who is a stockholder of any company who is a licensee of Pogo?
你有没有任何亲戚嘛？就是在一个公司有波格的牌照的一个股东或者一
我
个。
跟他说我不知道，这个没办法问我。
He doesn't know, Mr. Chairman.
He doesn't know. All right. So let's accept it as that, and I will confront you later next hearing on the evidence of this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, Senator Antiveros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick manifestation on the related to the interpellation of the minority leader
Please proceed.
with former USEC Lau.
I have to call Senator Pangilinan after you so that Senator
Yes,
Pangilinan
Mr.
doesn't
Chair.
think he's forlorn. Okay.
Just
go
a brief
ahead.
manifestation, Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead.
not a
Go ahead,
question.
please. Go ahead.
Yus and Kiko. USEC Lau said something that was earlier contradicted by a reply given by Mr. Ong. Because Mr. Ong earlier said na binayaran nila yung suppliers nila sa China from money received from the government. So admission po yun, di ba, na wala silang financial capacity. Walang financial capacity ang Farmally. So nakakapagtaka, inamin yon in effect ng Farmally kanina, tapos maramdamin yung statement ni former USEC Lau to the contrary. Kung alam yun ng Farmally, bakit hindi man lang alam yun ng PSDBM? Another sign, Mr. Chairman, of the absence of due diligence. Salamat po, Mr. Chairman. Salamat, Sen. Kiko.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Antiveros. Senator Pangilinan is recognized. Please proceed. Senator Pangilinan?
Sorry, yes, I have a few questions, DBMPS, on the delivery of PPEs. First question is that there was a delivery on April of PCR PCR kits, test kits. Is that not right? April of 2020 by Farmally. Mr. Lau?
I think PSDBM has records on that.
No, you signed the record. You signed.
With the government, I will answer to the best of my ability based on my knowledge. But
Well, this was the first. This was the first delivery, I think, of PCR tests in April of 2020. So, well, the record is there. It was submitted to us. PCR testing kits, except that the information that we received from RITM personnel was that the first delivery in April was incomplete, was not a complete delivery because the swabbing and the extraction came in June. In other words, the purchase of the testing kits that arrived in April could not be used until the swabbing extraction kits followed sometime in June, sorry. Can the DOH confirm this if Mr. Lao cannot remember?
I cannot answer as to the confirmation.
No, I'm already asking the DOH. If you cannot answer, I'm already asking the DOH to confirm this. And the RITM, are they here? I ask this because many local governments in April were complaining that they were provided with testing kits that they could not use because there was no extraction kits delivered. And it turns out when we looked at the documents will show that they first purchased, delivered the testing kits in April, but the extraction followed in June. So from April to June, yung mga dineliver nung April, hindi magamit. At halos siguro mag-expire na. Can the RITM or someone from the DOH confirm this?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask that Director Celia Carlos be recognized?
Yes, please.
Before you do that, I had a call from Senator Soto because he had to leave. I believe, Mr. With all due respect to Senator Pangilinan, Mr. Wang, he asked me to address a question to Mr. Wang.
Yes, please. We will.
Mr. Wang?
They're still looking for the answer or preparing the answer. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wang,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Lincoln, your man is about to be arrested, and I was about to ask him for his address. Is there anything you want to say that will possibly exculpate him?
I think, Mr. Chairman, firstly he's down with COVID and he's sick, and he's slightly confused. We are not used to-
I will beg your pardon. Please speak a little louder and get direct to the point.
I just wish to state on record that we did receive Mr. Michael Young's help with borrowed money from him to pay for this.
You borrowed money from Mr. Yang. You're now saying categorically
Yeah,
that you borrowed money from Mr. Michael Yang.
the company, not personally. The company.
Yes, of course, the company.
I think Mr. Lincoln Ong was hesitant to say that because it was just courtesy. Because at a time when we really needed help to source and pay for these things, he offered help. So Mr. Lincoln Ong was just. That's why I want to put it on statement that perhaps this is what caused him to be evasive. And since the money was borrowed, Mr. Lincoln, it was to our accounts, and we paid for it. Therefore, his statement that it came from a corporate account is correct and factual. So I just wish the committee to take that into consideration and not cite him in contempt, because I think it's just, when someone helped you at a difficult time and you have to say things that might implicate them, it's just very difficult. But what he said is factual. We did receive his help, but only after we were awarded the contract. So that is what I want to say. So I hope you can put that in consideration for Mr. Lincoln Ong.
Well, I will ask Mr. Lincoln Ong because you are saying that you have knowledge and you have actual knowledge, correct? That Mr. Michael Yang gave money to Farmally. Is that correct, sir?
Mr. Chairman, to be precise, I'll be very honest. Michael Young paid probably advance and paid the stocks. The goods.
And how much was that? You're already going to get drowning. Now, please tell the truth.
Mr. Chairman, we really need to pull out the record so we can be very precise.
No, you put it on the record. Now.
I think it's 1,000 plus.
1,000.
1,000. What?
I really have to check the
1,000
record, Mr.
what?
Chairman.
What?
I think he's talking about percentage.
I have to check the record. I'm not, Mr. Chairman.
No.
I'm not
This
trying
is
to be
not
evasive,
time
but
to
allow
waver.
me to pull out the records.
Mr. Chairman, I think the arrangement was, since we will not be able to finance these things, and we really needed to do that so that we would not get blacklisted, he offered to borrow us the money so that we will be able to pay for it.
And how much was borrowed? Was lent?
don't have the exact number, to be honest, Mr. Chairman. We don't have the exact number, but we would pay him back once we receive the money from the government.
So
Mr.
okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Minada Sebial, you are the certified public accountant of this.
Before that, Senator Dick, can I
Yes.
just ask them? So at the time that the contract was awarded to you, you had no financing whatsoever, because you say it is after you got the contract that you approached Michael Young. So when you bidded or when you were negotiating to get the contract, you had absolutely no funds to buy the supplies.
We
Is that
will,
correct?
Mr. Chairman, we are
No,
hoping.
yes or no? No.
If-
At the time that you were awarded, you had no funds
Yes,
to carry out your obligations.
yes, Mr.
Correct or
Chairman.
not?
I would say
Yes,
we didn't have the
because it
sufficient
is
funds.
yes, because this law is so arrogant and say that he complied with all the requirements. So here you are, the basic financial capacity requirement has not been complied, was not available because the grantee or the one who was given the contract admitted that they had no funds, and then they
Mr.
went to
Chairman.
Michael Young.
Mr. Chairman, there was no requirements submitted to us on the financial requirements. Whatever requirements that were
Yes.
submitted to us, we
Sige.
complied.
Don't,
And
Mr. Huang, do not argue with me on what the law is. All right? So, okay, so we just stick to the facts. The
Mr.
fact
Chair-
is you got your financing from Mr. Yang after you got the award. Question, how much was that? For the first contract? So 54 million
no,
was the first award. How much did you borrow from Mr. Yang?
Mr. Chairman, the only contracts that we really seeked help on are on the first the
Yes.
PPE contract, as well as the BGI contract, the first BGI contract.
So how much? How much?
I don't have that record with me, Mr. Chairman. But out the surgical mask, we did not seek help from, if my collections are right, I think I'm correct, that we did not seek help from Mr. Michael Young for the surgical mask. And as well as for the A-Star, it was funded by the company also. And for our contracts this year, we did not seek any more help from him. If we could not seek help from anyone, we would not. But it was a time where I guess the intention was that we are three young men. We are greedy. We wanted to bite off a bigger contract.
Well, yes.
And
Yes,
perhaps
I
we were
agree.
too ambitious.
Mr. Huang, I don't fault you for your ambitions. It is natural that as a young businessman, you try to get the most and the best contract. What we are talking about is from the Philippine side, there were certain basic requirements that must be complied with, among which is the financial capacity of your company. You won the contract without a single peso, and that is why afterwards you had to go to Mr. Michael Young. Those are facts, and whether or not that is, it's no longer a question of whether or not that's true, because those are facts established. The matter of the consequence or the implications, let's not discuss that here, because we are just looking after the facts and how the law will be applied. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, if I can have a short
Chairman.
reply. Mr. Chairman, if I may have a short reply. We realize that we've caused a huge ruckus, but we just want to make sure that people don't think that we are a dummy for Mr. Michael Young. We have thoughts, we have ambitions, we work on our resources, we plan.
No.
So it's just
we never
very
said that you're a dummy, Mr. Huang. What I'm saying is that you did not have the capacity to be awarded millions and millions of pesos worth of contract, and that is where we find fault. Not that you're a dummy. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you had no funds available. You got this contract. You went to Mr. Yang and got funds from him, loaned funds from him. So those are the facts.
But Mr.
I
Chairman,
yield to
we
Secretary Pilsen.
We
I
did
yield
deliver
to
it.
Senator Lacson.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Let me just finish, Senator Lacson. And this is all contrary to what Michael Young said, that he never had any dealings with Parmali since March 17. That is very patent, right, Mr. Wang?
Mr. Chairman, I do not understand why
Yeah,
Mr.
even-
Yang would say that. I thought he did a good
No,
thing.
no, I didn't ask you to interpret what. It was
Yeah.
very clear. He said he never had any dealings with Parmali afterwards. And Mr. Lincoln was really very evasive because he could not very well say Mr. Young's name. And now, cat is out of the bag. And up to now, I am sorry, you're still being evasive. We want to know how much was given. And I'm expecting an honest answer before this committee considers whether to continue putting Mr. Lincoln on under arrest.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the two families are not the same family, so I just need to clarify. The family pharmaceutical corporation, its shareholders are accurate and honest.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Lacson.
Yeah, going further, earlier, in his testimony under oath, Mr. Yang averred that he had nothing to do with the transactions made by Parmali except to introduce Mr. Lincoln Ong to the Chinese supplier. So I'd like to just put that on record again, just to emphasize that Mr. Yang himself has been very evasive and he lied under oath before this committee, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
That's what I.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can we
Mr.
be heard?
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Can
Let
we
me-
be
let
heard,
me-
Mr. Chairman?
Let the chairman. Excuse me, Mr. Yang. You'll get your chance. Senator Lacson and Senator Dillon are correct, and I thank so far Mr. Wang for coming straight. And now what you have is a situation where it shows that there was no capability to begin with, at least in the beginning, that the financial conditions of a contract with PSDBM was not met. I don't know about the technicals, that's just another requirement, and the legal requirements. And now you're saying that, in effect, that Mr. Yang actually lied to the committee. And that is not only by me, not only by Mr. Lacson, not only by Mr. Dillon, not only by Senator Hontiveros, but by the whole world who listened to you. We all heard the same thing. All right? Go ahead. Now you may answer.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, on the record, from April 16 to April 20, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, for a period of 5 days, Parmali got a total of 287,860,000 worth of contracts on a 625,000 capitalization. That's why all the protestations of Mr. Lau will not cover the fact that there was undue favor granted to Parmali, who was not qualified at all, whether by any standard, to be awarded 287 million 860,000 in a period of 5 days, from April 16 to 20. And that is why they had probably to borrow money from Mr. Yang. It's just a question of trying to find out how much money they borrowed and how much interest they paid. I don't think Mr. Yang is a philanthropist who will lend to them huge amounts of money. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's
Thank
on
you.
the record.
Senator, for the
Mr.
record.
Chairman?
Just a moment. For the record,
Yeah,
I would just like to expand on what Senator Dillon said, and I've shown this earlier. By May 4, or by, let's say, April 23, after those weekly transactions made by PSDBM with Parmali, they had already ramped up 1,875,000,000. 1.8 billion. That is what they have ramped up. And by May 8th, 2020, they ramped up a total, and that includes now the famous PhilHealth, the PPEs of costing 3.82 billion, and when you add that to 1.8 billion, that went the whole month of April, they ramped up 5.697 million, Mr. Frank, Senator Frank. And if you go on,
Yes, so I stand corrected. Yes.
and if you go on to June 9, in a period of 2 months, Senator Dillon, they ramped up
Yes.
a total of 8.5 billion pesos. And so much for Mr. Young not helping out and not interfering or not even having any dealings with Farmally. Yes, Mr. Young, you may now answer.
OK，你可以回复。
Mr. 你等一下哦，我们是给他们前面他们做的我们不知道，后面他来帮我嘞。我是你跟他说两段，前面他们做的很多我不知道，后面来找我，我是给他们介绍，他们有的人不够，我有介绍借钱，就是帮他们垫资，我没有拿钱借给他们。
Okay. Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang is saying, on the earlier part, in terms of how, in the earlier part of the contracts that
给他们垫资
Farmally obtained their contracts, we have totally nothing to do with those transactions. Only towards latter, we did introduce, and eventually, when they had difficulty, we introduced them to friends who helped them make those advances. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. So it's not true that since March 17, you have not had any dealings with Farmally.
I'm sorry again, Mr. Chairman.
So since March 17, when you met in Davao with the president, what you said is we never had any dealings with Farmally, and now you're saying that in the whole proceedings afterwards, they needed money, and you provided them with the money.
Mr. Chairman, it's
Quite clear.
family.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Do you understand English? You're already raising your
Mr.
hand. It has not
Chairman.
been translated yet.
No, we have been translating.
You understand English, Mr. Yang, right?
No, we've been translating, Mr. Chairman.
No, you were not. You're listening to me.
On mute, Mr. Chairman, we were translating.
Oh, no, come on. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Yang. Now you're on mute.
我听不懂，你要叫我说，就跟他开玩笑嘛。
要怎么说？
We're not happy about what's going on here.
两个花米粒是不一样的，菲律宾他们以前17年他们来有做个花米粒，后面他们再做个花米粒，我们是不知道的。
Okay, Mr. Chairman, what Mr. Yang would like to express is that there are two different Farmally that's been registered. One was 2017, which is totally different from the one that is in question right now, which is Farmally Pharmaceutical. The one in 2017 was Farmally Biological.
And the
These
board
two
of
are
directors
different companies, Mr. Chairman.
And
If I may, I mean, the argument doesn't hold, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
go ahead, you answer it. I don't want to answer it. Go ahead.
It doesn't hold, as earlier manifested by Senator Lacson, that he said he only introduced the suppliers and had nothing else to do with that after the introduction of the suppliers and Mr. Lincoln Ong. And now we find out, belatedly, that he was also one of the funders and the creditors, as admitted. So the argument that the Farmally of 2017 and the Farmally of 2021 are different does not hold water in view of the earlier testimony that he only said he introduced them, and that's it, which is obviously false.
Mr. Chairman,
Before I answer that,
manifestation.
the chair certainly warns the interpreter of Mr. Young. You do not put it on mute.
Sorry.
You do not put it on mute. When
Sorry,
you're
Mr. Chairman.
translating.
Okay, sorry, Mr.
But
Chairman.
we have a backup interpreter here. Precisely why the chairman got another interpreter. You
Sorry,
do-
apologize for that, Mr. Chairman.
I'm just telling you, in no uncertain terms, I hold you in contempt.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
You do not mute.
Okay.
All right?
他说我不可以静
Yes,
音。
Senator Contiveros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick manifestation that although totoo na magkahiwalay na kumpanya ang Pharmaly Pharmaceuticals at saka Pharmaly Biologicals, hindi pa rin off the hook sa inquiry na ito, Mr. Chairman, kahit ang Pharmaly Biologicals because of the role of Ms. Rose Nonolin in that company. So, mas itatanong ko pa yon when my turn comes, Mr. Chairman. Salamat, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, just very quickly,
Yes.
I'm still
Let us
waiting
finish.
for the. Yes.
Senator Pangilinan, please continue.
Yes, thank you. I asked earlier about the extraction kits that came 4 months, April, May, 3 months after the RT PCR kits. You cannot use the PCR kits without the extraction, but the delivery was 3 months apart. This is precisely why we're concerned about the capacity of Pharmaly, whether it's financial or in its expertise in delivering the needed equipment, the needed supplies that would help us address the spread of the virus. The information, I will repeat, that was relayed to us was the delivery of the PCR test kits in April could not be used because the extraction equipment was not present. If Pharmaly was a reputable company, I would like to think they would have delivered both the extraction kit and the RT-PCR kit so that they could be used immediately. That's why we're clarifying this, and a USEC from DOH should be able to clarify this, and also the RITM. Is it true that the RITM had no use for those testing kits that were delivered in April, or pretty much were useless because the extraction equipment was not delivered at the same time?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that Director Celia Carlos is already on board. Kindly acknowledge her. Director Celia Carlos, please. RITM Celia Carlos.
And is she there now? And before she answers, just for the record, earlier Mr. Hang was it Hang said that they had the LTO, which is a license to operate. Yes, they did, but their license to operate in at that time was for drugs, importation of drugs, not of medical devices. The importation of the license to import medical devices came in January of 2021. FDA gave them that license to import medical devices in January of 2021. They didn't have that license when they brought in these PPEs. They had a license for drugs, importation of drugs, not medical devices. So again, maybe Mr. Wang is being misled or being given information that is incomplete. Now we go to DOH. Can you answer, please, DOH? Thank you.
Just to clarify, Senator,
Yes, yes.
we are basing on recall because we don't have the documents with us right now. But as far as we recalled in the first SEM of 2020, there were indeed stockouts of extraction kits. We had difficulty having this available, and however, our operations in RITM at least did not stop. We had enough PCR kits since there were donations coming in, but there were times that we really had very limited stocks of the extraction kits. That's
Yes.
all.
In other words, you had the testing kits, but your extraction kits were limited from March, April, May. And then by June, maybe end of June, the extraction kits finally arrived. And that's when the bulk, and that's when you were able to use those earlier delivered testing kits, because finally the extraction kits that was necessary to use to be able to test properly was given. So you're placing that on record. We have the data. We have the information. The delivery receipt and the inspection reports, and the record will bear us out. If I may just put it on record, in April of 2020, dated April 21, the RT-PCR test kits, 2,000 of them, amounting to 688 million, arrived. No? And there was an inspection report. The documents are with us. And then in June 10 of 2020, so April to May, May to June, 2 months later, no, the extraction kits arrived at 245 million. So those, kung mahusay yung formally at alam nila yung ginagawa nila, hindi dapat dinelay, dapat sinabay yung dalawa para magamit. Yun ang ating punto rito. Kung siguro mas may kapasidad sila at na-check yung kanilang kakayahan at naiintindihan nila yung negosyo, naintindihan nila yung usapin ng ano bang medical devices ang importante, ano ang kinakailangan, baka hindi na-delay yung testing. At dahil na-delay yung testing, nagre-reklamo sa akin, 3 LGU, wala daw silang magamit na RT-PCR testing kits kasi wala nga yung extraction. And this was in March and April. Anyway, that's we thank the DOH for clarifying that. And this also goes to the question of the capacity of the DBMPS. And I apologize, but even this should have been raised immediately, that bakit wala yung extraction kit nung dineliver yung 688 million pesos worth of test kits, hindi ba? And yung DBMPS, si Mr. Owayan was the one who was OIC inspection. Were you familiar with this, that you were actually purchasing testing kits that had little or no use without the extraction kit?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Go
the records will show that the test kits were indeed awarded on April. However, the records will also show that the extraction kits were indeed awarded on June. Now, we only procure based on the APR as submitted by the DOH. So if
Yes, but you were the one who inspected. You were chief of inspection.
Yes,
Diba?
Mr. Chairman.
Did you not, or you're a lawyer, you're not a medical technologist, or you don't have any background in medical devices. So I would think you probably didn't know that you needed the extraction kit. I wouldn't know. I'm a lawyer, di ba? But that's the whole point. The DBMPS had no expertise, relied perhaps on the DOH, baka pa yung kung DOH ang nagbid nito, maintindihan nila yung usapin ng ano yung devices na kailangang isabay na bilhin. At siguro kung formally, uulitin ko, kung expert talaga, dapat alam nila, dapat sinabi nila, hindi nyo pa pwedeng gamitin yung testing kit kung wala yung extraction. Diba? And time was of the essence. We needed to test and we needed to trace. And we got 688 million pesos worth, at least based on the explanation and the data and the documents. We got 688 million pesos worth of testing kits that were useless for 2 months. Now, the other question is, were they expired by then? I don't know. Was there an expiry date on the testing kits? Was this checked? That I'm told may mga expiry ang mga kits na yan. So baka mag-expire na nung binili. Dapat mas mura. But of course, I'm just placing that on record for the guidance of the chair. I'd like to go back to Mr. Lincoln just for a few questions. Mr. Lincoln Ong. So lumalabas yung agreement na sinasabi ninyo na pinirmahan ninyo, Mr. Ong, may money may money consideration kasi nga utang, pinondohan, etc. Tama po ba 'yon?
Tama po, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So ngayon
Pero
na.
Mr. Chairman, pwede ko po ba ma-clarify na maayos?
Mamaya na, sige. Meron pa ako ibang mga Sino ang nag-suggest?
With the permission of Senator Pangilinan,
Yes.
I think there is I will let you continue, but we would like to have a recess for 1 hour for dinner, because this is going to be a long hearing, and you will continue after the recess. I
Yes.
think it is important that some of the senators also would like to talk to each other, so that the next hour will be very important, if that is okay with you. Otherwise, I will let you finish.
No, it's okay. I will yield to the chair's motion that we suspend.
I cannot move. You have to move.
Sorry, suggestion. And we will move that we suspend upon the advice of the chairman.
Thank you, sir. I see Risa Ontiveros. Are you seconding the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I second the motion.
Thank you. There's no objection, so we will. It's now 7 minutes after 7. We will come back at 7 minutes after 8. So all you kind hearts and gentle people who have the highest interest of the country at hand, if you want to listen, we will be back 7 minutes after 8 o'clock. So all of you can have a very, very, collected dinner, if you will. Thank you very much. And we will now recess. Session is suspended until 7 after 8.